Hello, Tandlers, and welcome back to TandL Talks. I'm your host, Nancy. I am so glad you're tuning in today because this episode, it's a good one. I've got a really special episode for you because I'm joined by three incredible educators who are part of our district's math cadre, a group that has been deep in the work of exploring what great math instruction looks like and what our next curriculum adoption might bring. And listen, they're coming to this conversation after a full day of thinking, discussing, reading, and probably a little brain stretching of their own. So we're catching them in that sweet spot where the learning's fresh and the reflections are real. Today, you'll hear from Tracy Tsujii, a third grade powerhouse from Waller Road Elementary, who brings curiosity, warmth, and so much heart to the conversation. Preston Gillihan, fifth grade mathematician in residence at Mountain View Elementary, whose passion for conceptual understanding and student thinking shines through every answer. And Kim Douglas, our resident kindergarten legend from Firgrove Elementary, who reminds all of us what it looks like to build math joy from the earliest days of school. And we're not just scratching the surface today. We're getting into the real stuff. The teachers who shaped them as kids. What fluency actually means. Spoiler, it's not just faster, faster, faster. Why manipulatives matter in kindergarten and beyond. How tools like Magma Math can build thinking and discourse, not replace it. And why they chose to step up as leaders on the math cadre. This conversation is thoughtful, it's energizing, and it's full of those little teacher moments that remind you why we do this work in the first place. So settle in, Tandlers, grab your coffee, your sticker-covered water bottle, and that notebook where you jot down all your big ideas, and let's get started. Hello, Tandlers, and welcome to TandL Talks. I am super excited to talk to three members of our math cadre. Could you introduce yourselves, please?
Yeah. Okay. Hi, I'm Tracy Tsujii. I teach third grade at Waller Road. Taught third grade. This is my 6th year. I took a couple years off in between, but now I'm back, so I'm super excited to be back in Puyallup.
Nice. I'm Preston Gillihan. I teach 5th grade at Mountain View Elementary. This is year 6 for me as well. Go Mustangs.
Hi, I'm Kim Douglas. I feel old because I've been teaching 26 years, and I'm over at Firgrove teaching kindergarten.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here today. You have spent a long day working as part of the math cadre as we're looking at possible math adoption. But before we start talking about that, I want you to think back to when you were a kid and think about a teacher who had a big influence on you.
I can start.
Okay.
Miss Barnes, 3rd grade, Spinning Elementary. Started learning multiplication facts. She was like super positive with all of that. We would do our time tests, all the things in math. She kind of just was a person who helped me believe in myself as a mathematician for sure. And just kind of gave me some confidence in myself at that grade level.
Great.
So, also my 3rd grade teacher, and I sometimes think maybe that's why I teach 3rd grade and love it so much, was Miss Sterling, my 3rd grade teacher. And I remember she was just so kind, warm-hearted. All these years later, you still just remember that kindness and that care. So, yeah, that had a big impact on me.
I think mine was probably my 1st grade teacher. Her name was Mrs. Martinez, and she just always kept track of all of her students, even through when they were in junior high and high school, and she clipped our graduation news clippings, and she was just someone that you knew was invested in you and really cared about you.
I'm hearing from all three of you just that importance of relationship, right? And that impact that we as educators have on kids. And you're carrying that with you all these years later, all those positive feelings. It's just a really powerful profession to be in. So thanks for sharing. So let's talk a little bit about the math cadre. We are looking at the possible adoption of a new math curriculum. And tell us, what are some of the things that you did today as you started that conversation?
Well, I know we started trying to develop a rubric because we want to be objective and not subjective in what we're looking at. We're looking about what's important for students, making sure they have rigor and that they're prepared to meet each grade level as they move up, and that there's some developmental progression that makes sense mathematically. And then also we're looking for teacher usability, that it's easy for teachers to teach, gives them the tools that they need to be effective teachers. So we're just kind of looking from a couple different realms.
Yeah, and to add to that, I feel like we looked at the previous cadre meeting, looking at like teacher feedback on like the forms and all the things in the surveys, trying to take into consideration what like everybody wants, trying to do our best, like she said, with the criteria of like creating a rubric and having like coherence throughout the entire school, right, kindergarten all the way up to 6th grade in the elementaries, just to make sure everyone's feeling like they're heard, the information is consistent, and everyone's working towards the same common goal, which is like student learning.
Yeah, I think you guys pretty much covered everything.
Yeah.
I feel like when we're all rowing in the same direction, that it makes a difference, right? When I think of the work that everybody's done with CKLA over the last 3 or 4 years, and we are seeing that payoff now. We saw the payoff pretty quickly with CKLA in kindergarten, but now we've just got more and more kids reading, and I would love for us to have that same teacher buy-in, teacher commitment to whatever curriculum we end up going with next. So thank you for digging in deeply. You all were talking this morning, you did some reading around, I think, like math fluency. Mm-hmm. Tell me what that was about. What were your thoughts? What did you learn? What did you already know?
Well, I thought it was really interesting to look at the developmental aspects of fluency. Being a kindergarten teacher, it's important to look and see where the kids are going. In the primary grades, there was a level where we were working on counting, then we move into just basic understanding facts. And then the fluency develops into where there's more accuracy and efficiency. So that was interesting to look at.
Yeah, in addition, it was talking about a 3-prong approach, being like being accurate, being able to get the correct answer, being like fluent, so being able to use a strategy specifically and pull a strategy depending on the problem, and then also
Flexibility.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Yeah,
I was like, I got that one. That was one I remembered.
Yeah, thank you. And being flexible with that. So just being able to like adjust to different problems, whether it's a higher level problem or like a grade level problem, being able to use that strategy to help you solve that. Right. Appreciate the help there.
Yeah. And I thought it was an interesting conversation because I feel instinctually you hear fluency and you think like fast, recall. And we more talked about how it's so important to slow down and deep mathematical thinking versus just things being fast. And so I liked that flexibility aspect because fluency is like having a knowledge base and being able to apply things, and then the quickness comes after. But I think it just redefined how I think of fluency, not just being quick, but there's so much more to it.
Right.
Yeah. And that connected to like what we were talking about with the rubric and the curriculum we're looking at, or bridges, is like we want to keep the consistency from K through 6 on working on those same things. So students are building kind of that foundational understanding, and then as they grow, that fluency can change, because we know fluency may be different for like a 5th grade student versus like a 2nd grade student, and just making sure that we're heading in that direction together.
I also think about, and I did this as a teacher, I did it as a student because it's just been common practice for so long, but that memorization, and you spoke about that with your teacher too. I was a kid who loved memorizing my math facts, and that can't be the only piece that kids take away. Some kids, that just comes really natural, but some kids aren't great at memorizing. And so that understanding, that conceptual understanding, being able to use strategies so that they don't get stuck. If I don't know what a math fact is, that can't stop me in my tracks. I've got to have a different path to get there.
Yeah, totally.
I liked this section where we were talking about visuals, manipulatives, and movement in mathematics. As a kindergarten teacher, we use fingers a lot in how to communicate our math thinking. And it talked about how even after you use that strategy as a primary student in counting, well beyond your age, you continue to use that strategy, at least from a metacognitive level.
For sure. I still count on my fingers sometimes. I do. I'll say it. Yeah, sometimes you just do. It's a great strategy. It's not a great strategy if I'm trying to figure out 232 minus 177. Counting on my fingers isn't going to be the best go-to strategy, right?
Well, and it talked about, too, that, there's a stigma.
Correct.
That if you have a student who's going to that we need to address that's not something that makes you less intelligent. It's just something that your brain has learned to help you be able to communicate and develop mathematical fluency.
Exactly. And really understanding that this is 10. When I hold up 10 fingers, that equals 10. You talked a little bit about math manipulatives. What does that look like in your classroom? And what are you thinking in the context of math adoption?
I'm trying to think.
Yeah, I mean, and it is interesting because we did talk a lot about how a lot of curriculums are starting to have digital components, and how does that alter how many manipulatives you get for your class, or are they going to become digital? Because there are a lot of great digital, like you have the blocks and the 10 sticks, but also the importance of having some kids are really hands-on. So like in my class, I use a lot of blocks and building arrays with blocks, and I know some kids that just clicks. So, I don't know. I know we did talk a lot about digital components.
Yeah.
I don't really know, yeah.
It's definitely important. We were talking about in the research, it talked about like movement and hands-on and working with things. In 5th grade specifically, it's like volume, right? So we're building volume rectangular prisms, or like using whiteboards with structures of like fractions to understand like sizes of fractions and making them the same size pieces. So, I mean, all those pieces are important. I know, like we talked about, like the digital component is something that we're taking into consideration. Do we want to make sure we have the hands-on pieces plus that? Is it just digital? Is it only one or the other? Those things are important to look into.
I know as a kindergarten teacher, we kind of live in mathematical manipulatives.
Right.
Singing, moving, dancing, making sure they're touching and counting. This week I had a really interesting lesson where they got to use Play-Doh, and we're working about 2D and 3D shapes. So they all built a sphere, and we'd made balls before so that we could work with Play-Doh. And then they pressed it to create a circle, and it was a mind-blowing experience for them. So it was fun for them to be able, and then we did a comparison chart about how they're the same and how they're different. And they were just so excited. They wanted to do the lesson over and over again. Can we play with the Play-Doh again?
I love that. Yeah, think of what that little brain does with a lesson like that, and just the aha. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was really fun to see their eyes light up. It was those are those fun experiences as a teacher you get to see.
Right?
You need to get them to make squares and then stack them on top of each other, and then teach them how they find volume. Yeah. That'll help us out a lot.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
We do have some balloons that we blow up, and we talk about how they deflate and they don't have volume and they become 2D. Yeah, that's something I do in my classroom, and they always think that's really fun. Like, the blow-up's lost its volume. It's becoming a 2D shape.
Yay. How do you just physically manage manipulatives in your classroom?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I feel like a lot of times manipulatives can be so great, but sometimes it can be distracting for kids. And so managing that is something I feel like I always take into consideration, just because I want those tools to be there for them. I know they're so helpful, but sometimes you have the kids who just end up building blocks with them. So sometimes I'll put the new manipulatives out and say, okay, we have 2 minutes, and I'll put on a timer, like, you can build anything you want, but the second the timer's done, like, we focus in. And I feel like sometimes that helps kids just get it out of their system, because I don't want to take away that natural, like, they want to play a little bit, but we also, as teachers, we have to stay on track. And so I sometimes feel like giving them that play time at the beginning, then when it comes time to use them for what we need to do, that has helped me with management. I don't know if that's what you were asking. That's just what I thought of when you said that.
I do the exact same thing, because we use like the digital component online with rubber band boards, geoboards. We do the same thing. Like we play with those. I let them like make whatever shapes they want, digitally and physically. Like just do whatever they want for a couple of minutes at a timer. Same with building the volume and rectangular prisms. It's like, you know, they're going to mess around with the cubes, but it's also good for them to build and play and get involved with lives and then get them back on track to have those conversations.
I do it a little bit of a reverse because in kindergarten, everything's a toy. So we have to teach the difference between a toy and a tool. So when we introduce a manipulative, we will do what you do, where they get to play with it a minute, and then we show it as a tool. We play, then we use it as a tool. So usually in my classroom, they know the learning target. So this is how we're going to use this manipulative, and that's demonstrated, modeled. Another student will model it, and then they always know at the end, if we've met that target and we've done what's expected, then they'll have an opportunity to play with it and be creative.
And then one thing I try to do is just bring the manipulatives like my small group area for students who are having, again, that conceptual understanding difficulty or difficulty with understanding things. I try to bring that so we can mess around with that, again, kind of really with volume or with shapes like fractions, like drawing on the whiteboard and cutting it into the same size pieces and talking about those things, just trying to get the visuals involved in the conversation.
Yeah. And it's been really exciting this year because I've been pulling a lot of smaller groups and having kids use the manipulatives, and then they'll be working something on their own and they'll say, oh, Miss Tsujii, can I go grab the blocks? And they'll know to grab them on their own now. And because they see how helpful it is, they've lost that wanting to play with them or using them as toys. Like they see how it helps them. So I've had several kids say, oh, can I go grab the blocks for the table? And then they'll immediately start building their arrays. And so it is cool to see that connection when they're excited about it because it helps things click for them. And so that's been fun this year. Just they always want to use their manipulative. So, yeah.
One thing I always like to try and do is, even if it's a lesson where I'm modeling using the manipulatives, I like to get it in the hands of the kids. So every kid has a manipulative. It's a really good way for me to do formative assessment and then give immediate feedback. So plus I'm going to have engagement. I can quickly see, oh, my friend is building a tower over there instead of a 7. So you can be able to give that feedback too and get them back on track.
Yeah, and a plug for people who are using Magma Math or not. Magma Math is another way we've been using that, like more digital, going back to that piece. But like I had some kids who taught me, like, you can drag the question over into your screen, then you can like grab the volume again, because that's our main unit of unit 1. It's like they were like counting up and using the colors on the manipulative on the screen to figure out the volume of the rectangular prism, which they just figure out on their own. Yeah. So like they start making towers, and then pretty soon they're like telling you how to run the application. It's just like how it goes. So, yeah, they know it better than I do.
I'm glad they still build towers in upper grades. Yes. It's not just kindergarten.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
So let's talk about Magma Math. I think Waller Road has had it for a while, or just this year. Do you?
We had it last year.
Okay.
I was long-term substituting there, but I did use it there, and then we're using it this year. So,
okay.
Yes.
And how are you finding it? We don't have it for kindergarten, but we have it through 5th grade.
I know things people have shown me. It's an outstanding tool.
Great.
Like, it's exciting.
No, it's great. Yeah, it's great all around. I feel like I use it in RTI. I use it to build fluency, working on things, using like different assessments and figuring out where kids have holes. You can use that during RTI. If they're not in your small group, or you're trying to figure out what to do with different students. You can also like attach higher level things for kids that you need to push and that you need to excel. So that's something else I do, is like some students who need to be learning something else that can explore on their own, I can give them that. So you can really differentiate and scaffold for all of your class, which is nice. And then the data that you get back is also interesting. Like you can break it down by the specific content area, the specific standard that you want to look at, how that student's doing in that area. And then this week I'm actually trying out, it's the first time I've done it as like homework. I just gave them a few problems. And the nice part is it grades, obviously uses AI and grades all the things. So teachers, you don't have to do any grading on homework, which is nice. But I can also specifically pick the problem that my entire class struggled with. I can pull it up and we can look at like misconceptions about that problem, what students did wrong, what students did right, and like ways to fix it. So it's a good way to use it as a tool of teaching.
Yeah. And then all of those ways I love using it. And one I specifically love for my kids is you can pull it up and it'll show how they showed their work. And so it plays it like a video. You can see what they write, if they erase it. And so we've been using it a lot where I'll give them all one problem and I'm saying, oh, I'm looking for somebody to show their work in all these different ways. And then they really want theirs pulled up onto the screen. And so I'll say, if you solve it one way, try to solve it another way. And then it's really fun because then, oh, pick mine. Well, I'm looking for this certain type of work. And so then we play it up on the screen, and kids really can take ownership of their work because they're seeing their work up on the screen, and then other kids are seeing different strategies. And so it's a really collaborative process, and it makes it easy because it's just, you just pull it up on the screen, everyone can see it, it like writes it the way they wrote it. If they do erasing, you can see that they erased or fixed mistakes, and it's super cool. So I love that component of it as well.
Yeah, and then one more thing on that is like at the end of, if I'm doing something at the end of the day on RTI time, you can put the whole screen up and make it anonymous so the entire class can see everybody's work. They don't know whose it is or what they're doing. But then the kind of the same thing is like they can see the different strategies pop up on the board. And there's like a green check mark, and then there's an orange thumb. And the green check mark is how far everybody is along the assignment, and the orange thumb is like how much work they're doing on the actual screen. And your goal is to try to match them up. And most often they're never matched up, but you're trying to.
But it's the goal.
It's the goal. So yeah, it's good for them to see, and they can look up if they get stuck. They're like, oh, that's a strategy to solve that problem. Or like you said, they take accountability for their own work. They love to show it up there and write little messages or whatever it is.
I love, too, how you're talking about this, because it isn't just a tool where you plug kids in and let them work independently, right? I'm hearing lots of conversation, and certainly there's that factor that you can use it as independent practice too, but it's much richer the way both of you are using that in your classrooms. Yeah. Now, Alexa has been doing some work with the cadre on building thinking classrooms with the vertical learning surfaces.
It's so fun.
Tell me about that.
Well, as a kindergarten teacher, it's so exciting to just see the different ways people attack problems.
Right.
Because I'm coming from that conceptual world, because that's where I live all the time. And then I'm seeing people form. It's just so exciting to walk around the room. You get excited. I said excited several times. But you want to go around and look and collaborate and see what everybody else is working, so you can take their knowledge and apply it and synthesize it to what you're working on. It's just, I'll say it, it's fun.
Yep. Have you tried it in your classrooms?
I've tried it a little. I've been waiting for our whiteboard because they want it on non-permanent surfaces. It's hard to do it because I tried it a couple times with just like the big Post-its, and the kids liked it, but even just finding surfaces, and it does feel more permanent to them, and my kids love working on whiteboards, so I am really excited to have what are they called? I can't even think of what they're called.
The whiteboard.
The whiteboard.
Plug for that. No. The whiteboards, just so they can. I'm really excited to implement it a little bit more. So it's been on my mind. I love doing it as an adult when we do it at the cadre.
Yeah, I would say I haven't done it specifically in my classroom, but I know my teaching partner just went. She's a new teacher, and she just went to a couple different classrooms, and they're using the same thing in different school districts, and she was like really excited about it. So I'll probably have to share half of my iPad. That's all right.
I'm kind of in the same place as you guys. I was waiting for the whiteboard. My gears in my brain were turning, like, how am I going to use this? And now that I have it, I'm so excited to play with it. Yeah.
You know, and I've just participated in a few lessons where we've used those. But the thing that is interesting to me is that there isn't an opportunity when you're doing that kind of learning, there isn't an opportunity to not participate or not be engaged. Every single person in the room has to be engaged. It's just how that learning process works. And I just think that could be so powerful in the classroom, because as a kid, you can't just hide behind the kid who always raises their hand with this kind of learning.
It's just a really fun way to build stamina for mathematics.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think it removes some of the pressure for kids to have to get things right, or everybody's watching, everyone's listening. When you just have 3 kids or 2 kids gathered around something, it takes that high stakes feeling off of them, so they can really explore or make mistakes and not have to worry about it being like feeling so public. Yeah.
And that the process is not necessarily getting the right answer. It's the way that you're trying to approach things, and at least attempting to come up with a solution. It's the thinking behind it and not the answer.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's building that culture of being able to look at how other people solved it.
Yeah, learning from different people's techniques or strategies.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really good for kids.
So tell me, how did you decide to participate as a cadre member?
I guess with me, I was always the kid who loved math. It was my favorite thing. It was my favorite subject all through school. I took extra math classes in college. But then when I tried to teach math, I didn't know how to communicate the skills that I had to students. And so that's just something I've tried to refine and improve because I want kids to be strong mathematicians,
Right.
because I know how fun it can be. And I think sometimes the fun has been taken out of math, but a problem can be very fun and entertaining.
And creative.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say I view myself as a mathematician, and so kind of the same thing. Like in my first few years of teaching, I felt like I could really help students succeed quickly in math, just maybe by the ways I was teaching or the enthusiasm that I bring specifically for math. And so being part of the math cadre, I thought it was because I feel like I'm understanding of math. I help students well conceptually understand math, and so maybe I would be an advocate for the math cadre to help out figure where we can head to help other kids and teachers.
Yeah, right along that same, I've always loved math, favorite subject growing up. That and art, I've always loved art too, but they are both creative in their own ways. But yeah, I just have a love for math. I love teaching math. I want kids to love math because I feel like it can have that stigma of math is hard. I don't like math. I feel like you get that more than with any other subject. I don't like math. And so just to be able to bring that joy to teaching kids math and make them feel successful, that was just, I don't know why for math cadre. I mean, I'm friends with Alexa and she asked me to do it and I was like, absolutely. So that was the main reason, but also just that deep love of math is why I said yes. So yeah.
Wouldn't it be great if every single kid walked out of our schools feeling like they're a math person?
Yeah.
Adults often identify themselves as, I'm a math person, I'm not a math person. I want every single kid to think they are a math person.
Well, I think that's one of the joys that I wish we could. I think we're getting better at it.
Yes.
In kindergarten, they do.
Yes, they do.
I am a mathematician. I can figure
Yes.
this out, and it's so empowering.
Yes. So if you had a piece of advice, if there's a teacher out there who doesn't feel super confident in their math instruction, what would be one piece of advice you'd give that teacher?
First thing that comes to mind is maybe like less is more, like try to take some things off of your plate and really focus on what's the main focus of this lesson. Kindergarten through 6th grade, if it's an adding lesson, subtracting lesson, multiplying, whatever it is, maybe take a few things off your plate and slow down, teach them maybe just one or two problems rather than maybe the entire problem string or whatever it is, and just try to get yourself into the thinking of 5th grade for more like mastery, for any grade, but for the mastery of it. Yeah, just slowing down.
I think presentation's important. If the students can see that you enjoy math and you love math and you're okay making a mistake, but the journey and the process is why you love math, I think that's how you build a mathematician. So just letting them see that you enjoy it and what you enjoy about it. And if you struggle, let them know how you struggle and how you work through it.
Yeah, and just always knowing that at the root, for me, I think of math like the root is just having them understand. Sometimes I feel like math, especially with curriculum, there can be so much to do. So kind of the less is more approach, like what do they need to know? And at the end, I just want to know my kids are understanding. I don't care as much if they're filling a whole workbook page out, but if I can take that time and just find that one concept that they need to understand, because it can feel overwhelming at times when you have all these different kids who have different needs and have to get all of this work done. So just taking a step back and realizing, like, I just want them to grow, I want them to understand, and then going from there. Yeah.
I just want to thank all of you for taking your time today to be on TandL Talks. I also want to thank you for your leadership. When you come down here as cadre members, we get subs for you, which is great, but we also know that anytime a teacher's gone from their classroom, it's a whole different kind of work. You have to build lesson plans for a sub, and then when you get back, you have to figure out what the sub did and where you're going next. So I know that even though you have a sub today, it's still a lot of extra work, but your leadership matters and your voice matters, and I just want to thank you for being here, and thanks for being my guests.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And that wraps up this episode of TandL Talks. I have to give the biggest shout out to Tracy, Preston, and Kim for bringing their full selves to this conversation. Their stories, their expertise, their humor, and their deep, deep care for students. You can feel their passion the whole way through. And honestly, I think episodes like this remind us that teaching math isn't just about numbers. It's about identity. It's about confidence. And it's about joy. And a special note here, cadre work is not light work. Even with a substitute provided for the day, we all know that stepping away from your classroom is a juggling act. Sub-plans, follow-up plans, catching kids up, recalibrating routines, it's a whole thing. So TandLers, when you see cadre members leading this work, know that they're doing it because they believe in our kids and in our teachers. It's leadership in the truest sense. What I love most about today's conversation is how aligned our educators are across grade levels. Understanding over speed, flexibility over memorization, tools that support thinking, not replace it. And the shared belief that every student, every single one, is a math person. That's the kind of mindset that transforms classrooms. Thank you for spending your time with us today. If this episode made you think differently about fluency or gave you a little spark of excitement for teaching math again, share it with another TandLer. You never know who needs the inspiration. Before you go, don't forget, if you're enjoying TandL Talks, make sure you follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon Music so you never miss an episode. It helps more educators find the show, and it keeps our conversations showing up right in your feed. Thanks for listening and for being part of this community. Until next time, keep learning, keep leading, keep doing great things with your students, and I'll see you soon on TandL Talks.